Hi, now let's get looking at part 2 of personality. In part 2, we're going to continue to look at the theoretical explanations as to where we get our personalities from. We're going to touch on social learning, or learning and social cognitive theory, humanistic personality theories, and then we're going to look at personality assessments. So we're going to start in that sort of learning cognitive area, and we're going to start more in the behavioral side. According to behavioralist B.F. Skinner, abnormal behavior continues because people have been reinforced for behaving this way. Now, according to behavioralists, personality consists of learned tendencies that have been acquired over a lifetime. The causes of these behaviors or habits lie outside the person and are based on past and present rewards and punishment. So from behavioralists and their role in sort of looking at personality, it all relates to how we are being reinforced. Nothing is done from the inside, everything is done from the outside. The outside consequences or feedback that we receive, good, bad, and indifferent, shape our personalities. Now, the social cognitive perspective, however, it states that personality is a result of both that environmental outside of us consequences and personal cognitive factors. Albert Bandura, he called his this relationship the reciprocal determination or reciprocal determinism. External environment, behavior, and personal and cognitive factors are the three components to reciprocal determinism, each influencing and being influenced by the other. So you've got the external environment, the feedback from others, the way the world interacts with us and impacts us and the decisions that we make. And then there's the behavioral, the things that we do and act and the decisions that we make. And then there's the personal cognitive factors, what we think about and how we feel. Those three all work together. And it's that which brings out this reciprocal determinism. Now, Bandura, he also indicated that the particularly important cognitive factors to personality was what was known as self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is this perception people hold of their ability to perform competently and successfully whenever they attempt something. So whenever you've done something, maybe you've been asked to join the volleyball team to play against another group of people, your self-efficacy about your experience in playing volleyball will be a part of your personality. If you've played a lot of volleyball and you feel good about your ability, you maybe jump into that with high self-efficacy. You know you're competent, you can be successful at this, and you look forward to jumping into it. Somebody else who's going along for the ride who hasn't got a lot of experience in volleyball might not have a very high self-efficacy of themselves as they approach that game because they don't have a lot of experience and they don't want to fail and let people down. People with high efficacy will approach new situations confidently and will persist in their efforts because they believe they are more likely to succeed, whereas people with low self-efficacy are expected to fail and will avoid some challenges. Now, Julian Rotter, he introduced two additional terms that will help us see why people behave the way they do. He introduced what he called locus of control. Now, locus of control can explain how people account for what happens in their life. And there's two broad strokes here. There's an internal locus of control. Now here, when we have a strong internal locus of control, we are primarily in control of our behavior and its consequences, and we see that we act on the world. That if I want to achieve something like my post-secondary degree, I am the one that influences whether or not I achieve that. That comes from me. I have strong locus of control. I will work hard, I will study, I will read, I will research, I will do my work on time and hand everything in. I will study for tests, I will achieve, and I will get my goal. That locus of control is internal. The other style of life, if you will, is this locus of control that is external. Now, this is where we believe that our destiny is in the hands of fate or luck or chance or in other people's hands. Now, people with external locus of control are less likely to change their behavior as the results of reinforcement. They're more likely to procrastinate and to have lower levels of life satisfaction. Because why would I bother going forward? There's nothing I'm going to do is going to change anything. It's going to be the teacher. It's going to be the class. It's going to be fate that says I don't deserve to achieve this. So it doesn't really matter what I do. Those two different styles of life are what Rotter was talking about that help us explain personality. Now, according to humanistic psychology, the two primary people in this area would be Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. To the humanistic psychology, human nature is innately good. Now, that's an important starting point, because you can either be innately bad, you're neither good nor bad, or you're innately good. And so if you're innately bad, everything you do is bad. You have to get feedback from the world around you to straighten you out and see this, the way to go. Innately, good or bad, you need a lot of direction. Innately good, and that just means that you're looking for and are responding to other things that are good and positive. And they're innately good, and that people have free will and a tendency towards growth and realization of their potential. Now, that's a very positive starting point for personality. Humanists largely deny that there is a dark and evil side to human nature, kind of Freudism, if you will. They do not believe that people are shaped strictly by the environment or ruled by the unconscious forces. Now, Abraham Maslow specifically saw that motivational factors were at the root of personality, and that's where the hierarchy of needs came from. That's a motivational. What are we motivated by? He developed what we now know as the hierarchy of needs. Our basic motivations are at the bottom. Food, water, shelter. These are basic motivations. Then they move up and move up and move up. And we want to go from the bottom and move our way up through to the top, where we get to self-actualization. Now, from Maslow's perspective, self-actualization means developing into one's fullest potential. Self-actualized people are able to accurately perceive reality. That means they're not putting a lot of spin on it. They're not trying to see it the way they want to see it. They're capable of seeing reality as it is, and they're not insecure about that, and they're not over-dominating in order to do that. Accurately as is. They're able to judge honestly and to spot quickly the fake and the dishonest. They're comfortable with life. They're not trying to imagine it being different than it is. They're happy because it is the way it is. They accept themselves, others, and nature with a good humor and tolerance. They believe that they have a mission in life. They're devoted to their life to some other larger good. So they don't just exist for their own benefit, they exist to help others. They feel strong fellowship with humanity and have a deep and loving bonds with others. They have a good sense of humor, they have peak experiences, and they have effective personal relationships. They're relatable to other people. Now, the other person in humanistic psychology is Carl Rogers, and he described the emergence of the self-concept. Self-concept, according to Rogers, emerges as a result of repeated experiences with terms such as I, me, and mine. He termed the we, positive regard, which is warmth, love, and acceptance, sympathy, and respect from significant people in people's lives. That once we have these terms emerge, we need, as the term suggests, this positive regard. And that was a hallmark of a lot of the work he did in the future. Now, Rogers coined another term called condition of worth to refer to the conditions upon which parents and others' positive regard is dependent. Conditions of worth force us to act according to someone else's values rather than our own. To get positive regard, we may deny our true self by inhibiting some of our behavior, and in doing so, we may experience stress and anxiety. And so conversely, if we have positive regard, We don't deny our own self by trying our true self. We, in fact, enhance that true self in our own missions, and we start to have less stress and less anxiety. Now, one of the areas that we can move toward is, and you've probably wondered, isn't there a genetic component? Didn't we just talk in some about that there could be some stable way, and that might relate to genetics? So what about behavioral genetics? Behavioral genetics is a field of research that investigates the relative effects of heredity, the environment, on behavior and ability. Now, research in behavioral genetics has revealed about 40 to 50% of the personality can be attributed to genes. Studies of twins and adopted children have found support for a genetic influence on many personality traits. This includes intelligence, leadership abilities, traditionalism, nurturance, empathy, assertiveness, neuroticism, and extroversion. So even so, there have been many questions regarding the variability of the environment over time, and the behavioral genetics have looked at the environment and have differentiated between types of environment. They've indicated there is a shared environment. This is where all the influence that make the family members similar, these are shared. It could be through your early childhood with your parents and your siblings, you come to share a certain environment, and that produces some very similar outcomes for each member of the family. Where the second group, which is the non-shared environment, these are influences that are unique to each member of the family. So, for example, my friends and the things that I did are different than my brother and my sister's friends and what they did. And those are non-shared environments. And those influences can result in each child eliciting different responses from their parents due to their own personal temperament or gender, birth order, or life experiences. So the environmental influences on personality are mainly from non-shared environments, and that's what makes some of our personalities different from other members in our family, is these non-shared environments. So lastly, what we'll do in this particular chapter is that we're going to explore the three major methods used in personality assessment. Now, there are more assessment tools than we're going to discuss today, but just looking at the broad strokes of three major assessments. Now, one is the observation, interviews, and rating scales. Secondly, there are inventories. And thirdly, there are projective tests, and we're going to look at all three. When we start with observation, the behavior is observed in a specific situation, and personality is assessed based on these observations. Now, these observations can be done in hospitals, schools, clinics, and workplaces. The interviews, these responses, or at least people will respond to questions, and these are used to assess personality characteristics. It helps in diagnosis and treatments for patients for these interviews. Also, in screen applicants, these interviews and personality traits or personality assessments can be done to screen applicants for admissions into college, special programs, evaluate job applicants and performances. There's many that you'll be doing surveys for. Rating scales are used to score or rate participants on the basis of traits, behavior, or results of interviews. They're used to record data from interviews and observations, provide a standardized format, and helps focus raters' attention on the relevant traits. Now, all these methods, the assessment is subjective, and so if I'm being evaluated, whether it's through observation or the interview or a rating scale, it's my perspective, therefore it's very subjective, that's being rated. Okay? And it depends largely on the ability and the experience of the evaluators to interpret what I say with an associated trait or personality condition. And so these take a lot of experience on the part of the rater to become better at. Now, another method, we're going to get into the inventories, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2. It's also known as the MMPI 2. And and the use of other inventories to assess personality. And we'll start with this. Now, an inventory, for your clarification, it's an objective paper and pencil test with questions about a person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, which can be scored according to a standard procedure. Traits theorists prefer to use the inventories to assess personality. The MMPI-2 is designed to screen and diagnose psychiatric problems. It's not a definitive tool, but it is an additional tool. Now, I also mentioned that the third group are what are known as projective tests. Now, a projective test, people respond to ink blots, the Rorschach ink blots, drawings of ambiguous human situations, or incomplete sentence for which there is no obvious correct or incorrect response. And like the projecting of your own inner thoughts, feelings, fears, and conflicts onto the test materials. Now, the examples I'll show you would be the Rorschach and the Thematic Appreciation Test, or the TAT test. Now, the Rorschach ink blot, the person being tested is going to view 10 ink blots. There'll be 5 black and white, as you can see, and 5 color. The test taker is asked to describe everything he or she thinks about each of the ink blots individually. What each ink blot looks like, what it resembles, what makes it think, what do they think about it, all of that for each one. And then that's what's being assessed. And so it's not that there's a right or wrong answer for any of these. It isn't what the ink blot is, it's your response to them and how they interpret that into personality components. Now, the Thematic Appreciation Test, the TAT, well, there'll be one blank card and 19 other cards showing vague or ambiguous black and white drawings of human figures in various situations. The test taker is told to, 1, make up a blot or a story that might be used as an illustration. Now, what's the relationship between the individuals in the pictures? Now, you might see a picture that has multiple individuals, each holding a pose in which their faces, their body position, the environment, the end just leave you clues, and you need to fill in the blanks as to what might be going on here. What are their thoughts or feelings? What will be the outcome of what you see here? Now, this essentially is, again, something where it's not critical what you say. It's just that what you say is your spin from your personality on a scenario that doesn't have a right or a wrong. It's just open and asking you to fill in the blank to the best of your ability. Okay, so this wraps up the chapter on personality theory and assessment. It is rather quick, but at the same time, each of these chapters become an individual field of study, not just in psychology. This is sort of a course you're taking to sort of sample different elements of psychology. So some chapters are much more robust than others. I hope you found this interesting, and we'll see you next week when we start looking at abnormal disorders. All right, everybody. Bye for now.